So I found this little advice from a firefly that I like to share with you. Be full of bright ideas, pulse with excitement, have a healthy glow, delight in summer evenings, keep a childlike sense of wonder, and set a shining example and lighten up. I thought that was a good addition to the talk last week. And this is what I have for you today. It's called I Hope You Know, and you're going to have to decide if you think this comes from God or spirit or where it comes from, maybe universe. I hope you know how much you're loved, how many people care, how often someone says your name whispered in a prayer. I hope you know how many lives are touched by what you do, how high the hopes, how deep the need to know you're being true. I hope you know how heaven sees the difference you can make, the unique role, the special road that only you can take. I hope you know God's love for you since long before your birth, his great desire to go with you anywhere on earth. For if you know, you'll venture forth with faith and joy and power, and rest within the love that's yours every single hour.
Oh my gosh, I grew up with that song. It's hard to think it was back in the 70s, early 70s, that song was out, and Carly Simon and, all of that group. But that song, to me, it reflects a lot of what we talk about here many times, what you may have thought about, over the course of the years, what science is now showing us a bit, where what and how we feel starts way before how we look. And if we have a mindset that promotes healing and promotes love and promotes those things, we benefit from that some way, somehow, somewhere in our bodies. And then that reflects in the way that we deal with other people. But we have to think of it also in the opposite way. When we are, and we've all had this, so I don't think if I said raise your hand if you have not had this, we get anybody, because I would be the first to put my hand up. When we get into these parts of our life that are difficult, when we get into these parts of our life that are challenging, we don't always have the foresight to say, well, let me get up and put a smile on my face. Some of us may, but it's hard. It's harder when we're not feeling that to really promote that and really put that forward. But if we work on the concept that if we do put positive vibes, so to speak, going from the 60s and 70s, the positive vibes in our own mindset, we can also look at it that if we put negative vibes in our mindset, it can affect our body, it can affect our attitude, it can affect our outlook, and it can affect our energy when we're moving about our day and about our world and in and out of family and friends and so on and so forth. Because again, we can feel energy. We may not be always consciously aware of it, but how many people had ever walked into a place, a room, somebody's home, a work environment, wherever, and you're like, I'm out of here, or no, let me sit down because it feels right. So even though we may not consciously be aware of us picking up energy around us, it happens 24/7. We're feeling everybody's energy. We're feeling the vibe of a room. We're feeling the vibe of a place. We're feeling the vibe of each other. And when we are of the mindset that it's a tough day, but guess what? I'm going to put a smile on my face. I'm going to put out love. I'm going to put out that feeling. Even though we may not be feeling it in that moment of time, maybe we are, but maybe we're not. Other people are. And when other people are, it becomes a mirror back to us. That perhaps then in some other person's thought to us, look to us, energy around us, that we can then start to feel a little bit more ourselves, or a little bit happier, or a little bit more, the future's going to be okay, even though right now it's not. I have a friend, this isn't the friend I talked about before, but I have another friend of almost 50 years who we call Eeyore. Not because we're trying to be mean, but that is my friend. She will find in the course of the day 25 things that can be wrong rather than 25 things that can be right. And again, she's full of love. She's somebody that would do anything for anybody, but not so much for herself. And I've always wondered in these almost 50 years if some of that was just changed a little bit, that she could reflect that care that she gives to everybody else back to herself. What would that do? How might that change? Maybe it would, maybe it won't. But it's always an experiment I've wanted to do for many, many years with that. But we have society that tells us a lot of times when we should be happy and when we shouldn't be happy. We have the news on, we have this on, we have that on. And again, when we talk about energy and vibe, we absorb all of that. We get all of that. And then we walk around with it all day. So whether it's a friend who you call Eeyore, or whether it's the news of the world, or whether it's something going on in your own life, we are constantly bombarded by energy that we can make a choice about if we're aware of it. If we're aware of it. I think there's a word that is used so much I don't think it's just our society, in the world, that is something that is so difficult for people to move past the energy of that word, and that's failure. How many times, in our growing up years, has somebody maybe suggested, whether it be a teacher with a grade that is failing, or whether it may be a parent who uses that word if somebody doesn't do what the parent wants to do, or a friend or a coworker or a employer as we get older, a professor, whoever it is in those stages of life that put that word out there. And then we look at it and we absorb it, because it is energy, isn't it? Words are energy. We absorb it, and in our body somewhere lives rent-free the thought of, I'm a failure. I can remember back in kindergarten, I don't remember a lot, but I do remember back in kindergarten. So what are we, 5 years old, 6 years old at the time, where we were given an elephant, of all things, to color. And I'm not the best at patience, I have to be honest. And I think even then I wasn't the best in patience. So I just colored, I just scribbled. And I remember bringing it up to the teacher, and she said, but you colored outside of the lines, and I took that in as a failure. I didn't recognize it at the time, but I took it in as a failure. And it registered into me for many, many, many years, until I could logically think about it, that I couldn't draw, I couldn't color, I couldn't be creative in those ways because I drew out of the lines. But the failure part of it resonated in my body. That word, the vibration, that vibe registered something within me that for years was very difficult for me to get out of my thought. So after that, if anybody was talking about doing something creative, I was like, I can't. I'm not creative. Those are the words that lived in me for a long time. So when we use this word failure, my question to myself now, when I hear that word, and I'll put it out there to everybody here to think about, what does that actually mean? Does it mean we stop, which I did at 5 years old with that? Do we stop, or do we look at it as part of the path of our life? That failure is not a bad thing. It's a reflection of where we are in that moment of time with something. If you think about, there's a quote that I love, and I've probably used it, before many times, because it it makes sense to me. But when Thomas Edison was doing all of his stuff, inventions, and if you're in New Jersey, by the way, Thomas Edison's lab and home are not far from here. It's about a 45-minute drive. I would say to you, go to it. It's really pretty fascinating. But to aside that, when he was creating a lot of what he was creating, as everybody was in different parts of the world at that time, and he kept working on he was one of the experimenters working on light bulbs. And there was I believe, a newspaper reporter, because he was trying over the course of many years, and it just wasn't really coming together at the time. And there was, I think, a newspaper reporter who said to him, how does it feel to fail? And he said, I didn't fail. I'm not a failure, but I just found 10,000 ways that haven't worked yet. Haven't worked yet. So unlike me, who then became the failure, Edison, in those words, reflected back in terms of, this is just a step in the road. This is just one part of my life. It's just a continuing try. And don't we all our lives have those things that we try? Maybe it doesn't work. And then we try it another time, and it may work, it may not. But if we keep moving in that way and not becoming the failure, not owning that word, then we see it as not failure, but encouragement. Encouragement. There's so many stories of people, famous people that we know today, who were told that they couldn't do what they became famous for. I remember reading something, and I know he hasn't been around the circuit for a while, but Michael Jordan, one of the most famous basketball players of all time, he was cut from his high school team, from his high school basketball team. So if he had taken that and said, that's it, I'm a failure in basketball, we would have never known him as the athlete he was. Lucille Ball, and again, these names go back, but she was told to get a different job, that she would never be an actress. Elvis Presley, how many people remember his story where he was told, keep driving trucks because you're never going to make it? And he changed musical history in the 50s and into the 60s. And these stories go on and on and on and on, that people that we see as successful, that's what we see them as successful. They were told they were a failure. But what they didn't do is they didn't own it. They didn't take that on. They didn't make it, this is who I am. They looked at it as either a challenge, I'm going to show you I can do it, or they looked at it as a piece of the journey, but not the entire journey, and kept moving forward. So on these days that we don't feel so beautiful, on these days that we don't feel so loved, on these days that we're not really feeling like I'm going to show the world, all the love in my heart, as Carly Simon said, it does happen. It happens to all of us, and it happens to all of us many times in our life. But the question is, what do we do with it? It's not about stopping at that point. It's about, what did we learn? What did we take from that experience? What can we use to go forward in that experience in maybe the same exact way that somebody else sees it differently? Or maybe we take a little bit of a jog to the other side, to a different area, to a different thought, but we keep moving forward. Maybe a little to the side at some times, but we keep moving forward. Now, some of you who are going through a lot right now might be saying to themselves, yeah, but you don't know what I'm going through. You're absolutely right. I can hear what you're going through, but I can't experience what you're going through. And that's a fair statement. But I'm going to come back and say, even though we may be in a situation that we are not feeling our best, wanting to feel our best, being our best, whatever the case is, can't be our best, Remember that is energy that we are putting out. And what is one of the natural laws? Like attracts like. So if we're putting that out, guess what keeps coming back into our life? More challenges, more things that people can say, well, you failed at that. So maybe Carly Simon has something there. Maybe if we do put that thought out in that way, we can shift that energy just enough so that we're not owning that title, but we are reflecting out what we deserve back, which is love, compassion, support, and an opportunity and a chance to take that next step forward. So I want to thank Carly Simon for those words, but also I want to thank all of you guys, because each one of us, each one of you have our challenges. We do. It's part of life. But what can we do with it becomes your choice. It becomes my choice. And I can tell you, I would never, ever, being 5 and having that sense of failure for a lot of years, I will never allow somebody to do that to me again. And that's my challenge. And that's my lesson. And that's my maybe Michael Jordan moment of I'm going to walk forward with it. So I challenge everybody. I challenge all of us to look at those things and not just say, oh, well, I can't do anything about it. Look at it and see, what can you do about it? Can you just put a smile on your face just for 10 minutes to start and see where that takes you? You may have people around you who are challenges. Do we love them for it? Do we get annoyed with it? Yeah, probably all of that. But can we put an energy to that feeling that can potentially shift that? That's our personal responsibility. And it's each one of us to make that decision of do we, don't we, do we wait, don't we wait? But whatever your challenge is, I hope that you tackle it. I hope that you meet it face on, and I hope that you keep that smile on your face the best way that you can.